Okay, hello. This thing on? Hello? Okay, good.
Hello.
Hello. Don't start it again. Anyway, hi everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Extra Credits Book Club podcast. I'm your host, William Woodard, and with me is other host.
Alex Green.
That's right. But what I was trying to show you was a
Yeah.
post that said something along the lines of I'm touching grass is too much. I gotta suck and fuck grass as well.
Sometimes it's the only thing.
It made me laugh. Anyway, we're finishing up the book Sabriel by Garth Nix. And this
Otherwise
might be
known as Sabriel by Tim Curry.
yeah, Sabriel. And this might be, for me personally, the biggest turnaround a book has ever had. Because the first half I was not having a good time.
Right.
I couldn't understand anything that was happening. Everything felt really esoteric and out there, and I was having a hard time wrapping my fingers around it. And then in the second half, whew, he actually started writing a story.
He stopped describing things in great detail to the point where he was just like, let me tell you about all the other things in this same category. And started actually focusing on the job to be done.
Yeah, it was real nice. Some real dope shit happened. Now, the first couple of chapters of the second half, it took me probably until chapter 19 before I was like, oh, that's right. I remember where we were now.
Right.
Because we took 3 weeks off.
Yeah, I guess we did.
Didn't actually finish reading it until like 2 days ago.
Yeah, that's fine.
But it took me the majority of chapter 17 and half of 18 remind myself that they were at that village.
Yeah, Nesto, I think.
Yeah, something like
It's a little like seaside town, and it's been overtaken by the dead. And Sabriel is trying to help them identify where the dead are hiding in the town. And they're basically having like a town hall meeting almost.
yeah.
And she kind of extends her death sense out and realizes that there's something dead with them in the like town hall wherever they are. And
Right.
she finds like she identifies this like fisherman who's acting kind of weird, but she's like he's still like he doesn't look dead, so what's the deal? But she quickly figures out that he's something called a mordot or a mordeau if it's French. I don't know how it's pronounced, but it's like Mordaut.
Or dot
And
is how old Tim Curry pronounced it.
okay, we'll go with his authority.
Yeah.
And it's essentially like a dead little parasite that attaches itself to your back and slowly sucks the spirit out of you. And it's so creepy and gross. And then as soon as she catches and identifies the fisherman to be like, hey, you come over here for a sec, the Mordot like sucks the whole like spirit out of the guy so fast that his whole body just like disintegrates in front of her. Like his flesh crumples and falls apart, his bones flake away to soggy ash as the Mordot sucked all the life out of him in one voracious instant. And I was like, ew.
Boy, see, speaking of that, suck.
No kidding.
Yeah, like this chapter for me was a blur because I was like, where are we? What's happening? And then, this guy has a dead parasite on him. And I was like, sorry, what's happening?
Yeah, they're basically like Sabriel's like, I'll help you get all the dead out of here, but you got to give me a boat in return because they're using Nesto as like their departure point to sail north up to Belisare.
Yeah.
And so they decide to wake up the whole town. They're like, we need people to hold lights. We're gonna go looking in all the houses, but they get interrupted because uh the Mordicant finds Sabriel. And she's like, she can sense the Mordicant like sensing her or getting nearby. And she's like, fuck, we gotta go.
Yeah.
So they basically, Sabriel's like, listen, I will help you guys get rid of all the dead in this town, but first you gotta give me a boat so me and my homies can get out of here if you don't want this like disgusting monster to come and ruin all your lives. But they before they leave, we find out two pieces of information. One is that Touchstone has some dope new swords that he took from the boats that were also made by
Right.
a force called like the Wallmaker, and it's the same entity that made Abhorsen and now Sabriel's sword. And we also get a little bit of like great charter lore because Sabriel meets that little girl on her way out of town who recites like a rhyme to her that they all learn in school when they're learning about charter magic. And we learn for the first time that like the great charters are not documents or entities, they're more like bloodlines or just like sources of magic. And I was really confused for a minute, but they say like 5 great charters knit the land together, linked hand in hand. 1 in the people who wear the crown, 2 in the folk who keep the dead down, 3 and 5 became stone and mortar, 4 sees all in frozen water. And so I was like, wait, what? Like I thought the great charters were like, I don't know, like legislature, but I guess not.
Yeah, and there was a couple times where Touchstone or someone will say Charter help me, and I'm like, are they gods?
Yeah, or like charter protect you or something like
Yeah,
that. And you're like, huh?
because normally you wouldn't say that about documents. Like no one's saying Bible protect me.
Yeah, I know. That is weird. And Sabriel's like, oh, 2 in the folk who keep the dead down. So, and she's trying to like finish her sentence, but the magic that prevents them from talking about the great charters kicks in, and she can't finish her thought.
Right.
So they're just they're just thinking about it. But she's like, oh, I guess like 2 of the great charters are in like the royal blood, and also her and her dad's blood, and some other stuff, I guess. But I was both like very confused and also like, okay, this is helpful information. But I still don't feel like the Great Charter as a thing is ever like satisfyingly described. But
No. And in fact, there's more introduced later that it's just like, what? Where did these come from? What is this?
yeah.
What do you mean? Uh, I believe um after they're on their boat, they start like as they're further out on the water, like the effect of the curse that doesn't allow them to speak about the charter stuff starts loosening, so they do a nice little info dub. We learn more about Touchstone.
Yeah, they're sailing and Sabriel's like starved for any conversation, and she, I guess Touchstone was like a captain or he was a naval officer in his past life or was really good with boats. So he's like taking over captaining the ship, and Sabriel's really relieved that he's like given up on his servant LARP that he was doing before. She's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, finally I put him in charge of something and now he's actually behaving like a human being instead of this weird subservient thing that he definitely isn't." And I think Mogget's being really rude to Touchstone, and Sabriel's kind of had it. She's like, "Fucking just tell me, why are you so mean to him all the time? Like, what do you know that I don't?" And she gets the down low because the sea apparently washes away the curse for a while. And we find out that Touchstone used to be in the Royal Guard, and he was childhood playmates with like the prince named, is it Rogier or is it just Roger?
Rogier.
Rogier. Okay, that's nice. Um, and Rogier was his childhood play friend or whatever, and he got in. I think he wasn't he just like a very mischievous boy and got into a lot of weird shit, and then he
Something
kind of
like that, yeah.
disappeared. Yeah, he like disappeared for a while. He basically, let's see, I think, yeah, I don't. It doesn't really matter what his life was like, but he like Rogier just goes away for
A time.
multiple years. He starts getting into like before he disappears, he starts getting into really like into free magic and necromancy. Um and Touchstone is like, I never suspected that he would do anything fucked up later. But then Rogier comes back and he's like, "Oh my god, something crazy is happening under the castle, Mom. Better come down and see what it is." And the queen goes down with him, but she wasn't going to, but Touchstone like persuaded her to do it because he was like, why would Rogier do anything shifty? He's my buddy and her son. And the queen was like, I'm kind of in the middle of something. Like, I'll come down later. And he's like, no, no, you must come down now. And he goes down and sees that he's sacrificed his two sisters. And then he like slits his mom's throat and breaks a charter stone or something like that.
I
And
think he
ruins.
breaks a bunch of them.
Right. Oh, yeah, he broke six. He broke six with the blood of his own sisters, and he had
Yeah.
all these free magic minions. Slices the queen's throat, and I think he sees the abhorsen of the time approaching, and that's like the last thing he remembers, like or something.
Yeah, and Touchstone is very upset that he couldn't do anything about stopping him. And then I believe that's when Sabriel kind of has the realization that Rogier is the Ketagor.
Yeah, the like abhorsen sworn centuries old enemy.
Yeah.
Because I guess it was like a nickname that Touchstone gave to him when he was a kid. It's a
Yeah.
pretty dope nickname to give somebody. It's a super villainous nickname.
But their sort of backstory exposition gets put to an end when they start getting close to Belisare and the curse starts working again.
Yeah. And it's like Touchstone is super convinced that it's gonna be just like the Belisare of his lifetime, even though it's been 200 years and there hasn't been a regent in 20, and like the whole rest of the kingdom has completely fallen to shit. He's like, no, no, like you guys are gonna love this place. It's
Belisare
so
is dope.
lively.
You're gonna love
Yeah.
it.
And it is livelier than Sabriel imagines, but it's like not as cute as when Touchstone was around. But they like there's just people doing like fishing commerce in the harbor, and Touchstone's like it was a lot cleaner back then. And they like moor their boat and they find this little street urchin and they're like, "Can you show us an inn, like how to get to an inn?" And he's like, hell yeah, follow me. And takes them to this super cute little inn called the Sign of Three Lemons. And
Right.
they like hear this bell start ringing, and Sabriel, and it's like a really shitty sounding bell. Like Sabriel's like, oh god, like what is that sound? And he's like, oh, everybody, it's the sunfall bells. Everybody goes inside when they hear them, so they don't get like fucked up by the dead. And they get to this inn and it's super cute, and Sabriel's really excited for a bath, so she gets all of her stuff into her room. She goes and gets into the bath and starts like hearing some pretty like sus noises through the wall. Like she's like she hears sounds coming from Touchstone's room. And it's like she heard a man's voice through the wall, basically just like
Thumping,
having yeah,
giggling, then
yeah,
more lively giggles, more thumping.
yeah.
And then,
Bathtub sex noises.
yeah, Sabriel works herself up into a frenzy. She gets
She's
really
so
upset.
it's literally like I found her so endearing in this moment because it's such a universal experience. Well, not like in an inn with bathtubs
Yeah,
specifically,
this
but
specific instance is super relatable.
yeah, when you think the person you like is hooking up with someone else and you're like, "Well," she's like, "Well,
Devastating.
I don't even like sex anyways. Like it's too much of a hassle." Meanwhile, she's like underwater crying in the bathtub and I was just like, "Poor baby." But Maga shows up while she's in the bath and is like, "Just so you know, Touchstone's room's actually this way." And he's actually downstairs right now reading the news and he wants to know if he can use your bathtub after. And she like brightens up and is in like the best mood anyone's ever seen her in. Like she comes skipping down the stairs after and she's like, "Ooh, my evil like smelling swordsman. Of course you can use my bath." And then they have a little
Yeah.
everyone's like, "Why are you so chipper all of a sudden?"
No
And
reason.
they just start making a plan to go searching for a person's body. And they decide the best place to search is probably where Rogier killed the queen and where all those stones were broken.
Yeah. And uh Sabriel's like really put out by Belisar because it's like she's like there's dead all over the place. And nobody
Yeah.
seems to be like doing anything about it. And they go into what I think they call like the Deadlands.
Yeah, something like that. It's like right outside the city walls or
Yeah.
something.
And he notices that there's like a bunch of scavengers, and the scavengers have like a chain gang of children slaves.
Yeah.
And
It's so fucked up.
Auga and Touchstone are like, well, we better steer clear of them. And Sabriel has a little Daenerys moment where she's like, no, we can kill them right now.
Yeah, free the
And and
slaves.
and everyone has to be like, think about what you're doing. Think about the repercussions of this completely irrational and spontaneous act. He's like, you're right, it would be more trouble for us and the children. Like, alright, cool. Now let's go do what we came here to do.
Yeah, to her credit, she does listen, which is nice. Like, I understand the urge to be like, let's fuck these people up. Because
Right.
these kids are just like toddlers, and they're being let out for the sole purpose of like luring out the dead
It's
to
almost
eat them. So that,
it's almost ridiculous at how like small some of these kids are, like completely useless at that age.
yeah. But they're literally just there as bait so that the scavengers can go somewhere else and start looting.
Yeah.
It's so fuck.
And also they kind of like get down into like the catacombs, I think.
I was really confused about what kind of environment they were actually in. Like I know that they took down it was like 100-ish stairs into some kind of reservoir, but I
Yeah.
can't figure out because it's daytime when they're
Right.
doing this, I think,
But with
and I
like
can't
cloud
figure
cover.
out if it's like yeah, but is it like a cave or is there like the sky open above them?
I
I
assumed
couldn't figure that out.
well this is the I made a note because I was confused about this and I was like Garth Nix went from um getting too lost in his descriptions. Now he's not giving us anything.
Yeah. Because I
But
think I went back and like read that part a bunch of times and I was still like super not clear on like what kind of situation it was.
the way that my mind decided to kind of interpret what it was hearing was that it was kind of like catacombs, and the reservoir underneath the ground had like the stonework had fallen away and sunlight was kind of peeking through it.
Okay. That makes sense to me. We'll go with that.
But when they get down there, they come across a door that is super old and they can't open. Sabriel has the knock spell. She just blows that shit off its hinges.
Yeah. And
Uh,
her and Touchstone have a really cute moment where I think she's like, wait, you don't have to come down here if you don't want to. Like, I don't want you to lead you into like certain death. And he's like, where the fuck else would I be? And
Yeah.
then she's like, I'm glad you're here. They just have a little moment. He's like, same.
Yeah, and then they make it down into the reservoir, and then they did it. They found him. They found Abhorsen.
Yeah, and he's not dead. He's just crystallized
And he's all
in
frozen.
frost, and he's in like a diamond of protection, similar to the one Sabriel tried to do
Now,
earlier in the book.
I got confused by this, calling it a diamond of protection. I thought, because in the next chapter, she creates a diamond of protection as well.
Yeah.
And my brain, the way it was described, it sounded like she materialized a diamond. But then, as it's described later, it's just like a protection circle on the ground.
Yeah, I think it's always a protection circle on the ground.
Right,
I think it's the same thing as like calling the corners in witchcraft or like creating
right,
like
fully.
casting a circle where it's like all the elements are represented in each point of the diamond.
Yeah.
But
And it
yeah.
was like later, uh, yeah, like later in this chapter, I made a note where I was like, oh, it's not literally a diamond, it's like a protection circle. Because for whatever reason, when she casts it, it's described as her crafting it.
Yeah, it's described weird.
And I was like, why? Like, are they going to put it in their pocket or something? I don't understand
Mhm.
the purpose of this. But it's just a protection circle on the ground, essentially.
Yeah, and as she's doing it, Touchstone like looks over at her and he's like, "Wait, she's a girl.
Yeah, she
And
a
she's hot."
woman.
Like it's like the first time he's seeing her as like a girl instead
Which
of
is
a person.
completely ridiculous. Because she's in this giant surcoat that is unflattering in every way possible. She's got a helmet on.
Yeah, she looks dope.
Yeah, she does look dope, but she's not it's not like you can essentially like look at that and be like, "Oh my god, the ass on her."
No, I think he was looking at her eyes and her hair. I
Oh,
think those are the things he was focusing on.
maybe this is fucking just brain damage put upon me from the debaucherous trash we've read.
I mean, it's very very likely we've read a lot of debaucherous trash.
Where
And
everybody's just looking at each other lecherously.
yeah, 100%. I would say Touchstone is the opposite of a lecher. And he's just like, "Wait, she's really kind of beautiful." And then they each have like little moments where they kind of want to make out or like give each other like little kisses and then they
Yeah.
don't. Like he like bends his head at one point, just like kind of want to kiss his hair part right now, but I won't. And then he gives her like a really clumsy like kiss on the cheek that's almost on
Yeah.
her helmet
Yeah.
before she goes into death.
The
And I'm
kind where
like,
you're
I
like
just felt the shame when
you bump your chin into him or
yeah, it's like up here.
yeah. And then I made a note because Sabriel essentially like puts herself into death so that she can go searching for the porcelain.
Yeah.
And it's described in detail. And I made a note of like, see, this is how going into death should have been described from the start.
Like we get the description of the gates for the first time, and she's been to these. We've had mention of the gates like 4 or 5 times by now,
Yeah.
and I'm like, fucking finally! Like she's like, okay, the first gate or the second gate, looks like a big like whirlpool sinkhole situation, but it's really
Hmm.
silent. It's like that would have been so great to know
Super cool.
200 pages ago. I would have loved that. And the third gate is a waterfall concealed in a wall of mist, just like the first gate. And it's like, that's the first description we've gotten of
Cool,
the
great.
first gate, too. Very cool stuff.
Then she
And
gets
she's,
chased by something at some point.
Yeah, I think there's a couple little like straggler dead creatures that are like
Yeah.
after her and she just kind of ignores them.
But there's one thing in particular that I think chases her, where she like throws a rock behind her and then
Oh
starts
yeah.
booking it, like purposely looking straight ahead, because
Mm-hmm.
she knows if she looks at it, then it's just gonna get hyphy about it. And
Mm-hmm.
I made a note where I said, "Wow, Sabriel succeeded where Orpheus failed. She didn't look
Yeah.
behind her."
Big rips, Eurydices. God,
Eurydice. Eurydice.
Eurydice. Eurydice. But back in the reservoir, Touchstone and Mogget are noticing a bunch of like the dead are starting to come up and line up around them.
The
And Touchstone is like, do we have to worry about this? Mogget's like, yeah.
the way it's described is great because they Garth Nix makes a point of constantly saying, and he uses this description a lot when he's talking about like essentially the dead zombies, where he uses the word clapping, where it's like their bodies are kind of just clapping as they shamble. So, but
Yeah.
in my mind, I'm just imagining the zombies like approaching, like,
Like little flamenco dancers.
yeah. I'm like, oh, how
We're
fun.
about to have a dance off.
Um, Eventually, Sabriel finds Abhorsen next
Hmm.
to the beast monster thing that originally turned up at the college to give Sabriel the sword and bells.
That's right. I
And
forgot it was the same monster.
she like wakes him up, and I made a bunch of notes about how Abhorsen was acting super suspicious
Oh.
because he kept saying stuff that I was like, my man, are you actually Rogier?
Oh.
Because I don't remember exactly what he was saying, but he was like, oh yes, we need to get back to his physical body, you see, and all this other stuff about like kept trying to convince her that he needed to get out, all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, I don't know if I trust this pal.
Oh, I didn't even consider that, to be honest.
Well,
But
it could have been the way that Tim Curry was reading it as well.
maybe. But I think he's trapped. Like his body that looks like him is trapped in the gate, like the fourth gate, and he can't get out. And he's using the creature that he sent the sword and bells to Sabriel as like a mouthpiece because
Hmm.
he's like so trapped in the gate. And I think she ends up getting him out by ringing two bells simultaneously and doing
Right.
like Tai Chi with the bells. And but I think it's at that point where she realizes that even if they do get back, he's been away in from his body for too long and he's been in death for too long to ever truly live
Hmm.
again. And I think that's why I didn't get suspicious because I was like,
Right.
oh. But at the same time, like that could have been a really good motivation for him to try to get back into life to like if like he could know something that she didn't and need to get back with like all the dead that were around. I don't
Also, her ringing the bell simultaneously, which was a funny visual for me, because you'd think that ringing two bells at the same time is not hard.
know.
However, the way it's described, it's like with one she's going like dee ling ling, and then the other one she's like dangling doom dang and ling dang.
It's like doing
Yeah.
this.
So I was imagining she was like doing one of these.
Just-
But this also brought to my attention that we don't know how big these fucking bells are. They're never
they're-
described in size because the way she's got them on her person,
yeah,
so they would have to be small ish.
yeah,
However, when he finally comes out of the gate, he puts his hands inside of them to stop them from ringing. And it's like, well, how big are they if his hand can fit inside it?
yeah. Maybe some are a little bigger. I know Asteriel's pretty big, right? Like,
Well, how big can
and
it be for you to
Sarah.
carry it on you? The bigger the bell, the heavier it is. Oh.
Well, I think you'd have to put. I mean, it doesn't have to be that big to fit like your hand
He stuck his whole
inside the
fist in it to grab the little
clapper
the
thingy.
little uvula.
um, yeah, I don't know. I don't think they're that big.
Hmm.
I just look at like the cover art and I'm like, oh,
Right.
they're all that big.
But if
But
they're like, you
that
can't
is
fit your hand
described
in those.
weird. No.
Hmm.
Suspicious.
But I also made a note that I said, if her dad isn't Rogier, then I'll be shocked. And I was dead wrong. And shocked.
Wow. For the first time, I think, in one of these books.
Yeah, the first time well, I mean, the most important aspect of me thinking the plot was going to go one way and me being wrong was that this, like, Garth Nix is a good writer.
Yeah, because I feel like there have been so many times where you're like, yeah, oh, of course it's gonna go this way. And I'm like,
and
you
it
don't know that. You
and
don't
it
know that for
does.
sure. And then it
Absolutely.
always is. And I'm like, all right.
But all those books have been bad.
Well, what was the last one? There was one where I was like kind of hoping you'd be wrong, but I knew you weren't gonna be, and I can't remember. It wasn't that long ago.
Darkness Inside is probably, I had that fucking
Oh,
book
oh
pegged.
yeah, it was that one when you're like they're clones. I was like, but they might not be.
Yeah, I had that book's
Yeah.
number real quick. Because I was like, hey
What?
man, I read all these, like, this, all mystery and space books are the same.
Well,
Uh,
especially I guess sci-fi that is like World War II and III. I'm not gonna put too much thought into civilization building or destroying.
oh
Let's
boy.
just let's get these boys in space in a water purifier together.
Who cares about world building? We gotta get these boys kissing. Um, I believe after she wakes him up, um, he's like, come on, we've gotta go. And then he just
Yeah.
like starts running towards the exit, and she's like, "Oh my god, he's been here for how long?" And he's like a spry old man.
Yeah, and then he's also like, "Come on, we gotta hurry." She's like, "We are hurrying." Like, she's like, "Can you just say thanks or like hi?" Like,
There's no
I
time.
thought I've been thinking you were dead for this whole time, and he kind of he like with the way she responds, he's like, "Oh," and then turns around and like gives her a hug, and he's like, "You've done very well. I'm sorry, I'm a bad papa. Let's get back to life. Okay, we really have to go." But they are making their way back as they're like sprinting. He's filling her in on like Karagor's body and where it is. And this was something that I thought was kind of silly, where she's like, "Why didn't you let me grow up in the old kingdom and learn how to be a proper Abhorsen and all about this necromancy shit?" And he's like, "Well, we figured out that Karagor's body is in Ancelstier, and we needed somebody to grow up on the other side of the wall to fucking be Google Maps for us." That's the whole
Complete.
reason she grew up on the other side of the wall, so that if these like seers, I think they're called clairs, I don't know how it's pronounced, but
Claire, yeah.
uh they're like gonna show her in like mental visuals how to get to this thing, and he's like, "Well, none of us know our way around on the other side of the wall, so that's why your childhood was shaped the way it was."
Such nonsense.
But we also find out that Touchstone is the prince, the royal prince, because he's actually a
Oh yeah.
bastard son of the queen. And he tells Sabriel, he's like, "Okay, when we get through to life, you grab the prince and you run like hell for the Claires. They're waiting for you in this space, and they have some paper wings."
Yeah.
And they have like a little father-daughter hug moment. And
It's the classic, like, hands on shoulders. You must go.
mm-hmm.
Also,
But at
this
the
is
beginning,
in the like when they cut back to Malga and Touchstone, like fog starts cascading down the stairs, and like Rogier starts like he like sends fog ahead of him in a very dramatic way, and I was like, oh, he's got the bad guy has like a sense of the drama
Yeah.
where he's like,
And
I'm arrived.
yeah, we also find out it's like a vanity fog to obscure his facial features because he's self-conscious about his decaying face.
I would be too.
Yeah. They're like he really wants to look impressive. Mogget is like to Touchstone, like he really wants to look impressive for you, but he's feeling a little self-conscious about his face, so he's obscuring it with fog. And the Mordicant comes back, and it's kind of like the Mordicant, Rogier, Sabriel, and a person kind of all show up at the same time.
Yeah. And I believe like as soon as this all happens super fast. Sabriel and a
Hmm.
person turn up, and Sabriel is like, ooh, okay, that's done. And then she sees that Touchstone is losing his like he's freaking the fuck out. He's having
Hmm.
full mental breakdown. So she goes to give him the which I wrote in my notes, the literal kiss of life.
Oh yeah, it's because a person starts ringing a stereo, the bell that makes everyone who hears it just be like, I think it's time to die.
Well, that's after like the bizarre, super condensed series of events is that Sabriel and a person come back from death. She runs over to
Hmm.
Touchstone and starts kissing him. In the meantime, a person grabs Mogget at some point, puts him on his shoulder, and then they start running towards the dead, so that when the kiss of life is done, they look over and she sees her dad running off with Mogget, and then she notices that he has a Steriel, so she's like, "Oh shit, we've got to get out of here so we don't hear that."
No,
Be-
they hear it.
well, then why didn't they? Oh wait, they did hear it. That's why she had to do the kiss of life.
Yeah.
But like all of this happened within 2 paragraphs, and I was just like, "Oh god, there's so much happening all at once."
Yeah. Uh like the whole like Mogget going with a person was very confusing to me. I was like, and I remember I think Touchdown is like, oh, I've noticed that Mogget's collar's off. Should I try and put it back on? Oh, never mind. Sabriel's pulling me away. And so like we don't get to see the like fight of the ages happen between a person and Karagor and Mogget because Sabriel and Touchdown, she literally like bites his lip in half because he's like ready to die, and they just like savagely make out for a little while and
Yeah,
then just like cling on to each other until like the bell sound fades away, and then they run and they start like making their way towards the Claires, and they notice that they're being pursued by scavengers,
yeah.
and so they're like, ooh, we gotta pick up the pace. But then Sabriel gets shot through by an arrow, and something snaps inside of Touchstone where he picks her
He
up.
goes beast mode, like
Yeah,
almost literally beast mode to the point where I was like, "Sorry, are we reading a Sarah J. Maas book all of a sudden? Why is he gone feral?"
I need to
Because
find the passage.
he literally like tears his like tears his shirt open and like "Rah!" and then picks her up and starts like running on all fours like a maniac.
I know. She basically, okay, it goes, he threw his head back, roared out an animal like challenge, and started to run up the road, gathering speed from an ungainly lurch to an inhuman sprint. Froth burst from his lips, blowing out over his chin and onto Sabriel. Every vein and muscle in his face and neck corded out, and his eyes went wild with unseeing energy. And he does not stop running even after they're well ahead of the scavengers. and he basically gets them to the Claire, gingerly puts her down, and then passes out.
Yeah. I was imagining the vampire running from Twilight where his legs are not moving fast enough for how quick he's going. Or
Yeah.
the CW's The Flash,
Oh
where
yeah.
they're just going like this, but the background is super fast behind him. It looks awful. Stop doing
Yeah.
that.
There's like no effort being made in their entire upper body. They're just like, and there's one point where like he kind of slows down, but it's like Touchstone broke into a gait that could only be described as a gallop. Like what? He's just like he's doing the Monty Python like
Yeah.
horse trot over to where the Claires are.
And then when they get to the also, I think we skipped over it, but the Abhorsen basically tells Sabriel that the Claires are waiting at some portion of the city with two paper wings, and he's like, they're gonna take you to Ancelsia,
Yeah.
where you can go find Rogier's body and deal with that.
Yeah.
And he's like, I just hope they haven't got their wens mixed up.
Right.
And I was like, that's a pretty sick line. And it
I
turns out
know.
that the Claires are two creepy twins.
Yeah, but they're so dope at the same time.
Yeah,
And
they're not
they
really
just have
creepy.
no, they're like they're clairvoyant, but they don't have any sense of linear time, so they are not sure like what time it is around them at all. But they have this really cool healing ability where they like take Sabriel's arrow wound and heal it, but it basically I think they just like sped up time in like a localized point of her
Hmm.
body, which is so dope.
Yeah, that's it's pretty good. Because they make a few mentions where they're like, oh, we did this, that, and the other thing, so it's time for you to go, or gone, or maybe like the kind of thing where people who have no concept of real time are just like, we've so we came today, or yesterday, or tomorrow.
It's all of us trying to parse together the chronology of the years of COVID where we were all at home by ourselves. It's like, did I see you last year or 4 years ago? I actually don't know.
2019, 4 years ago, feels like 3 decades.
Yeah, fully.
But they basically the girls stick them in a paper wing, send them off, and then they get in their own paper wing and fuck off.
Yeah, but before they do, they give Sabriel the little uh street view of the location of where the sarcophagus is.
Right.
And wouldn't you know, it's right near where Sabriel's old school is. So that's convenient.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, you guys are gonna go back to that school so that it's a full circle. I'm on to you, Garth.
Yeah, fully.
It's good storytelling. You always gotta
Mm-hmm.
bring it right back around.
Yeah, you really do.
Um, but she lands near the wall, and
Mm-hmm.
we bring back some of my favorite characters, and this is either because it's the way Tim Curry reads them, or it could just be that like they're just random soldier guys. But all the like
Mm-hmm.
military guys at the wall, I love. They're some of my favorite characters in this book, and I think it's because Tim Curry, when he does his like prim proper, good British soldier,
Mm-hmm.
he does his like Nigel Thornberry voice,
That's so perfect.
and she hangs out with them for a while, and she's basically giving them the lowdown, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we've got to go get the sarcophagus, or else everybody's dead for real.
Yeah. Also, my dad is dead, so the what are they called? The wind flutes that they have at the wall that prevent the dead
Right.
walking through are gonna fail tonight. She's like, "When's the full moon?" Horace is like, tonight.
Why,
She's like,
it's
that's
tonight.
impossible. I've only been above the wall for 16 days. And he's like, time moves differently beyond the wall. And so it's tonight's the night. Karagor's coming. And they need as many charter mages as they can muster to go get the sarcophagus so they can destroy the body within.
Yeah, and at some point her Book of the Dead starts bleeding,
Ew, I know. That's so
which
creepy and fun.
is both. It happens suddenly. It's one paragraph, and it's never mentioned again.
No. Sabriel's like, and like wipes it off. And that's
Yeah,
about
but they
it.
go on a little trek. They convince like basically she says like we've got to go get this sarcophagus. We also need like every charter mage we can find. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
but the wall. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
everybody. And she's like, and that means you as well. Um, and I think it, like, he comes back after he's like, I'm gonna think on it. He comes back and he goes, yes, I will go. And then she realizes that he has the sight, implying that he knows he's gonna die. So he's like, saw
Yeah,
himself dying there. So he's like, well, yes, I will go.
I know. It's so sad. Sabriel's like crying. Her eyes are misting over a bit. And they're on like a little truck ride.
Yeah, they're going
And
to the village where the sarcophagus is.
right, Horace gets out of the car for a second, and Touchstone looks over at Sabriel and he's like, I love you, by the way, just so you know. I
Yeah.
hope that's okay.
And she's like, me too.
That-
I know I haven't said it, but I do.
yeah. And then Horace comes back in. So they just kind of hold hands in the back
Yeah.
seat. I was like, this
They
is
do like
so fucking cute.
the teenager thing where they like try and sneak a kiss while the parents aren't looking.
Yeah, it's so cute. But
Um,
then the Rogier's vanity fog starts rolling in again, and they're like, oh, fuck, here
yeah.
he comes.
And for whatever reason, every time they're like they get to this village, they start ringing the bell, which tells everybody to go inside.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing like the Indiana Jones digging up the ark, where everybody's just kind of like digging up the section and taking turns because the deeper they get to digging, the more everybody feels nauseous and starts like barfing and shit.
Yeah.
And then they try and open it, and it doesn't work.
No.
So she's like, "We need more charter mages," and Horace is like, "This is all we've got." And she's like, "But wait, my school. They teach magic there, and there's some a bunch of them who can do it." So
Mm.
they're like, well, we can't bring them here. There's not enough time. Damn it, there's not enough time. So they're like, well, why don't we just take the sarcophagus to the school? And they do. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's in this chapter or the next one, but there is one of the most incredible one-sided phone conversations I've ever seen in text.
Really? Who is it?
It's Horace is talking on the phone, and the way Tim Curry did it was pitch perfect. It was so good. He was like, "Yes, yes, of course, oh, yes, I've got them here right away. Okay, as you see it, ta-ta." Oh,
Beautiful.
it was so good. I was like, "Man, this is my favorite part of the whole book."
A one-sided phone call?
Yeah, it was so good. But then, they start doing like everybody loves battle prep.
Yeah.
They start like conscripting teachers and students to start helping prep the school for battle. The
Mm-hmm.
soldiers are like installing machine gun emplacements.
Yeah. The headmistress is like giving them so much fucking grief about the whole thing. It's just like, everybody here is being so rude. Like, how
Yeah.
dare you just barge into this school? You can't. My girls are in lessons.
And
And I
they
think Sabriel like magics her a little bit and like
yeah,
gets her to calm down.
she like puts her into a trance, and they're like,
Right.
and they just kind of like shuffle her off to another room, and they're like, the the mistress needs time to think.
Right.
And then I believe, uh, once all the battle prep is done, they start working on opening the sarcophagus, and everybody's holding hands, doing their
Mm-hmm.
fun little magic, and then so begins the Battle of Wyverly College.
Yeah. They I think like the army of the dead starts like filing up towards the school, and all the military dudes out front are basically just trying to blow them to smithereens because it's the only way to get them to stop moving. Like they just
Yeah.
have to cease functioning. So they're doing that. They like blast the sarcophagus
Imagine, if you
and
will, the Battle of Hogwarts, but instead of the bad guys being racist, fascists,
mhm.
they're zombies, and instead of the Hogwarts school using magic, they're using machine guns and grenades.
Yeah, fully. There's no like giant statue suits of armor. It's artillery, heavy artillery.
Heavy munitions.
Yeah.
And
And
like a lot of the like they've got the machine gunners going, and you hear like Sabriel just mentions hearing like machine gun fire in the background. And then she like comes around a corner and she sees a bunch of soldiers sitting in chairs drinking tea, going, "Mom."
yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, those must be like the melee fighters waiting for their turn."
Yeah. And I think once they get into a circle and they manage to blast the lid off of the sarcophagus. And that's around the time that Mogget, but not Mogget,
Yeah,
bursts through the door.
evil demon Mogget.
Scary, scary, laughing, sounds like dogs dying Mogget.
Yeah.
And basically shows up with a porcelain sword.
Actually, the way Mogget's like Mogget, I think it was Mogget, when he busts in, says he laughs, and his laugh is the sound of a match being struck, and I was like, ooh,
Ooh, I missed
ooh,
that. That's really good.
so good. But Mogget is like, I'm gonna murder the Important.
Yeah, and it's like, did you not get your revenge on the like, what were you doing with the porcelain back in the reservoir? Like, what happened there? We don't really know. We don't
Mm,
get any
yeah,
deets. So like,
but
why would Sabriel have to pay the price of previous support? I don't know. That I never got a satisfying answer to that.
no, but right before Mogget is going to kill Sabriel, like Rogier busts in, and then him and Mogget start fighting? Question mark.
Yeah. Yeah, Rogier's like, get in line. I'm here to kill the Aborson. And then Mogget's like, I've waited too long. And they start fighting. And Karagor is kind of like, you know, in Fern Gully, like Hexus, also played by Tim Curry,
Hmm.
that's kind of like the shape I imagine Karagor is in. Like Hexus, when he's in his like ooze state,
Right. I was
it's
thinking.
kind of like that.
I was just imagining him as like a lich, like complete
I
with
think,
like
yeah.
ostentatious cape and everything.
Well, I think he is for a little bit. I think he's in Hexus form for a bit. He's like a shadowy kind of ooze until he fights Mogget. And then because they look over at him at one point, he's like digesting Mogget after they
Yeah.
fight. And it seems like the ooziness is getting more pronounced. And then he starts
Right.
coming for Sabriel, and she uses her bells to manage to get him into his body that's in the sarcophagus.
Yeah.
So it's that he's in his true body, except his true body is disgusting because it's been like rotting for 200 years. So, um, I think like Touchstone's leg is broken at this point. He's on the ground.
Yeah, it should be mentioned that when Mogget busted into the room, like it exploded the wall and killed
Yeah.
almost everybody who was in there.
Yeah, like 6 of the girls, her favorite teacher, Touchstone's all fucked up,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Sabriel, get out of here, run away, go live a normal life." And she's like, "No, like how would you run away with me with your broken leg?" And it's like, cute. And then she gets kind of like her hero pose moment before she goes in to fight Karagor. And I think this is before she even gets him back in his like previous gross body.
Yeah,
But
because her sword
she
comes back too.
Yeah, she gets her sword, she's got her bells, and she's like, time for me to fucking face my destiny. And that's when Karagor is like digesting whatever Mogget was. Sabriel manages to get him back into his body, and then he does a gross thing where he's like, "Ooh, give us a kiss," and she's like,
Yeah.
"The fuck? Why?"
Yeah. It's pretty creepy, but she does the classic, like the magical version of in movies where you get intimate with somebody and then just kidding, I'm handcuffing you to the radiator.
Yeah, 100%.
Because she slaps Ogget's like restraining collar that kept him in the form of a cat. She slaps that on him, and he's like, "No!" And then he turns into a
Yeah,
cat.
it's described so cool though. It's like it's basically like it goes on him, and I think it's described as like a disgusting type of apple core. So it's like sludge and decay and body pieces are coming off of him as
Yeah,
this like ring is coming down the center. And I was like, that is such a vivid way to describe a very like esoteric process. And he impales her through the stomach, and there's like blood gushing out of her stomach. She thinks Touchstone is dead. Um, but I think what happens with the cat is that he actually splits into 2 cats and turns
he
into a white cat and a black cat.
he turns into the black cat, and because he consumed Mogget, Mogget comes back as the white cat as well.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I was really confused about who the white cat was and didn't realize that Mogget could come back. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
But Sabriel dies,
yeah,
and
she
that's
dies.
the end. The end of the book.
No, it's not. There's an epilogue.
Yeah, just kidding.
Nice
She's not
try.
dead.
Nice try. Although the epilogue is really short, and it's just her
It's
like her ancient ancestors going, "Get the fuck up, dude. What are you sleeping for? You've got so
yeah,
much
it's
to do."
it's not your time to die. So she comes back. Touchstone's like, "Oh my god, you're alive." And she's like, "Yeah, I guess so."
Yeah,
And
her
that's the book.
ancestors basically just said no. Touchstone is like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you're alive," and she goes, like the last line of the whole book is, "Yeah, I am." I
Yeah.
was like, "That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
It's a good book. I really turned around on this book."
I'm so glad. I was so worried. I was like, I talked so much like good shit about this book. I've been so excited about it for years and years. And I hope that it lives up to the idea of it that I had in my head, and it did.
And I made a note where I said that the end, like the climax, the Battle of Wyverly College, is one of, if not the most exciting climax in a book we've ever had on the show.
Yeah, I fully agree. Despite Jade City's biggest, like, best attempt.
There were no climaxes. Fucking
Well, it was when Ander went like sicko mode.
even that was kind of uh weak.
There was
Cause
no giant cool magic battles.
no, which I think is a huge miss.
Yeah, fully. Why give them cool, like, magical martial art powers?
Yeah, if they're not gonna fucking use them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what do you say we pick another book?
Yeah.
Let's see what we've got here. little broken. It's a little broken. Don't want to fix it. Don't worry about it. Okay, so what we've got on the wheel this time are some returning ones that can't seem to get off the wheel for the life of them. We've
Mm-hmm.
got Song of Arbonne by our boy Guy Gabriel Kay. We've got Cold as Hell by Retzi Bruno and James Castle. Castile? Um, and we've also got Hollow King by Richard something. Can't read it from here. It's a Warhammer book. The new editions are The Book of Dust by Philip Pullman, which I am to understand it's a prequel to his Dark Materials.
I think it's a prequel.
And we've also got Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie, which is a standalone novel in the first Law series. Let's give it a spin. What are you hoping for?
Song for Arbonne.
Yeah,
But
I could go
I'm
for
good
that
with
one.
any of
I could
them.
go for that one.
Honestly, I'm good with any of them. But I just haven't read a good Guy Gabriel K book in a hot minute. Or you're gonna have to tell me
Oh,
what it
what's
is.
it gonna be? We're gonna read Arthur Morgan Demon Hunter.
Oh, hell yeah.
Cold as hell. Dutch, I done
I'm actually I'm
seen
really looking forward
monsters
to
and demons you wouldn't believe.
that.
Well, dang. I'm excited. This book is gonna. This book can't be anything other than rootin' tootin' time, because it's
Yeah,
Arthur Morgan, the voice
yeah,
actor for Arthur Morgan, talking
yeah.
about doing Arthur Morgan Demon Hunter.
Yeah, I'm
What's
gonna
not
go
to
back to the audiobook format for this one.
very good. Well, folks, that's it. That's all we've got this time. We'll be back with Cold as Hell in 2 weeks, I think. Hopefully.
Yeah, maybe. My work trip might correspond. We could always just push it by a day.
Yeah, no big deal. But
Hmm.
anyway, that's it. That's all we got. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you next time.
Farewell.